Welcome to the Totum podcast. My name is Tim Irvine. This is Dr. Stacy Irvine. We are your hosts. Thanks for joining us from one of our locations here in Toronto, where we have our health, wellness, and performance business. And we are just trying to give you great information by which you can make good decisions on your own health and wellness journey. Today we are joined with Dr. Tamara Kung, naturopathic doctor, talking about recovery in our series on recovery. And today the focus is on nutrition. So Tamara, how is nutrition going to help our recovery? I know we covered what recovery is in the last episode. So curious to hear how you think nutrition fits into all of this.
Food, my favorite topic, as you guys know. So when we talk about how we want to nourish ourselves post-workout, I often, in all my other talks with you guys, I never emphasize on counting any numbers, calories or macronutrients, but this is an area where I do tend to focus more on protein intake, and the research on protein is, coming up. It's not so much, just even the grams of protein you want to make sure. You want to try to achieve the full spectrum of amino acids, different protein types, right? So that's the I think, big thing that people should be aware of, because we work hard and we want to repair and regenerate and grow muscle and strength and improve endurance. So I think protein intake is a big one that I'm becoming much more aware of, and helping support my patients post-workout. But also we want to make sure that we have less pain and suffering after workout, which is not necessarily nice. Yeah, that'd be nice. Some fun studies shows that taking watermelon or eating watermelon after working out can reduce the delayed onset muscle soreness, the DOMS, as well, which is interesting as well. So there's a lot of different foods that we can focus on, and goes also back to baseline, like real foods, right? Things that are not going to further inflame you, because why people are sometimes sore or uncomfortable after workouts, it's not because necessarily their muscles are broken to shreds. It's actually swelling and inflammation, right? So if we can help reduce the swelling and just kind of move that fluid out a bit more, reduce that inflammation process. We know this, our Toto community, what foods for lower inflammation the best are the real foods, practically speaking, right?
Awesome. And I think that, in other conversations that we've had, obviously, fruits and vegetables are a big part of a well-balanced diet. I think a lot of people who lift weights, especially men, think, okay, well, I lift weights, I've got to have some sort of meat protein to be able to take advantage of that, or supplemental protein to take advantage of that. How does the fruit and vegetables all fit in with that line of thinking?
Yeah, so almost every food does have some kind of protein in it, right? Different forms of protein. And so if we're trying to look at different sources aside from animal protein, you've got your plants, and the all-stars of that are your lentils, beans, nuts and seeds as well, right? So having a variety, like if you were a plant-focused eater, if that's all you're consuming, you just have to be very mindful of having variety in your diet. That's a huge component,
to
because
get the complete
amino acid set, right? Okay. Because it is the quality of amino acid variety that is what we're seeing in the science really important for athletic performance, or just physical performance in general, right?
So it's not just a case of, that thing's got protein, I'll eat that. You've got to be a little bit mindful of...
You got to be more strategic.
Okay.
Yeah, especially if you're getting it from plant sources, because the plant sources don't have a complete set of amino acids in them, whereas an animal protein does. So that's why, you want to make sure you're putting pumpkin seeds on top of that, chili, that bean chili that you made, things like that.
Right. Okay, so just to break this down and make it very simple for me, say I'm lifting weights for an hour, pretty heavy, and I want to have optimal recovery, and I eat meat, and I like smoothies with protein powder and all of that. First of all, is there any evidence about this, eating it immediately after, like within 20 minutes or whatever, that our cells absorb it faster?
So what the evidence shows is that if you are new to working out, then it's really important for you to have protein and carbohydrates within 30 minutes
30
after
minutes.
working out.
Okay.
But if you are a seasoned, gym goer, or your body's used to this kind of exercise, it doesn't really matter how long after, as long as you get the amount of protein in sometime during your day. So that's what the studies show for that.
Is that like an adaptation thing that your system, your body, after having done it for a while, kind of knows how to deal with the protein, knows how to store it? Or is it the newness of exercise?
I think it's the newness of exercise more, because we don't store protein. Like that's one thing that's why we have to eat a bunch every day, right? So I think it's like the newness, and like your body's just kind of figuring out like how to incorporate, or like what to do after this process. And I think the protein stimulus kind of prompts this whole metabolic chain of reactions to support muscle growth and healing as well. So I think it's more of like a prompter than anything else.
Interesting. Okay, so back to my workout. So I've worked out for an hour, very hard. What are my rarely happens. What are my top 5 things? So I eat all meats. What would be my top 5 things I need to? What are the best 5 things I should eat right after? I'd say I'm able to do that.
Yeah, so it depends on if you want to sit down or if you're on the go as well, right?
Let's say I can sit down.
Yeah? Okay. I would love for you to have a piece of fish. So some kind of small fish like a salmon or sardines on a bed of greens would be really great, and a side of sweet potatoes or some kind of nice complex carbohydrate. So we do need some carbohydrates to refuel and replenish our muscles as well, as and then just having a low inflammatory animal protein would be helpful.
which would be the fish. Okay, and how would that compare to protein powder in a smoothie? Am I assuming that the good quality protein powders are low inflammatory?
Yeah, I could say they're not very inflammatory. If you don't have a lot of additives and sugar sweeteners to them, I would say they're totally fine as well. So if you're on the go, that would be your good one.
And okay, so for someone like me, let's say I weigh like 145 pounds, I've worked out for an hour. What are my grams of protein that I should be thinking about with that meal? Like how much do I need?
Right. So the RDA requirements of protein per weight is like 0.45 grams per pound.
So you just kind of take your weight in half.
But what we see is actually beneficial to us is at least 1 gram per pound.
Per pound.
So for you, it'd be 145 grams in a day, at least. If you want to
in a day.
In a day, right? If you want to maintain. But if you want to build, you might have to go up to 1.2 to 1.5. Extreme athletes, maybe even 2 times, right? But per meal, maybe you can't absorb all that protein in one meal, so there's no point just hammering it in. So I would say you're capping it up to 40 to no more than 50 grams is what your body can handle and absorb, right? So, a good 40-gram protein meal would be ideal.
And so how big of a fish is that?
So that's about a salmon like this big.
That's pretty big.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that looks like it's sort of 8 to 10 ounces.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So that's a bit of a readjustment for me, because I really do try to eat it, but I think I have pieces that big.
No.
Right?
Like 6 ounces probably is what you typically do.
Yeah. So that's interesting.
And our kids, or any youth athletes who are way more active than we are.
That's hard, right?
Probably need, if we're talking 10 ounces for us after, as part of working out.
Right.
For them, it's probably more. Is that right?
Probably more, because they're young and they're growing and they're pushing really hard.
Yeah.
I would say, but it doesn't have to all be salmon, right? It could be from nuts as well. It could be from an egg. So you could do like a niçoise salad, for example, right? So you've got your baked salmon, you've got hard-boiled eggs cut into it, you've got green beans, you've got nuts on top of it. It doesn't have to be just a chunk of meat.
Right. Yeah.
That's hard to eat. I totally get that.
Very interesting. And what would an egg be? How many grams of protein?
I think an egg is between 6 to 7 grams per egg.
Okay. With our kids who are teenagers, pretty large and incredibly active, we often have the smoothie with the meal.
Yeah.
Because we just find that, first of all, they like it. We know they'll drink it. We can put a bunch of things in it that they need, the vitamin D and all that kind of stuff. So that's an easy solution for us, and also get the greens in and all of that. My next question is, we have been adding the creatine, and then we just read some new research that if you put the creatine with magnesium, you get better absorption. Speak to your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I haven't seen that research yet on magnesium, but I would believe magnesium is something that relaxes our body, and also anything that kind of vasodilates your system increases oxygen efficiency and output, right? So if you are talking about like pre-workout meal, very interesting, like if you're giving creatine, for example, right?
Yes.
The foods that help our body vasodilate are the foods rich in nitric oxide.
Okay.
And those foods are a beet and arugula salad. So beet doping is a thing that you can search on.
This beet juice thing very, a lot of athletes are doing this.
Yeah.
And so tell me, is that why? Is it the vasodilation? Is that what they're going for?
Yeah. It's
so interesting.
Increasing your oxygen efficiency, right?
Wow.
You're oxygenating your whole body and your muscles way more, right?
Okay.
And that's what gives you that power output. Not just endurance, but strength as well.
How much beet juice do you need?
So I think the studies do something like a quarter cup or something like that.
Okay.
But what's better than a beet is the beet greens, and what's better than the beet greens is arugula. So I think arugula.
So in the smoothie, then maybe
you can put it in the smoothie. I find arugula in smoothies kind of like bitter, but I usually do, before any big workout event, I do a beet arugula salad plus whatever protein and things you want to have. But I actually feel that way for the Toronto half marathon I did a couple weeks ago, and it felt pretty good. So
that is fascinating.
So I'm going to dial this back a little bit from the geekiness that Stacy's bringing into.
I have so many questions.
Because this is, I think, one of the problems. We're talking about nutrition related to recovery, and everything she's talking about is true and accurate, as what you are answering is. It's just, it makes it kind of confusing for people when they're listening to this. Is like we're really being specific, like a quarter cup of beet juice, and so backing it off now to more practical thoughts about nutrition, whether it's for youth or somebody that is trying to recover from a weekend of camping, which is lots of physical activity that they're not accustomed to, or trying to keep injuries down or inflammation down, or those sorts of things that all contribute to recovery of any sort. The other thing I have for you question is around, I just had a really wicked work day where I had 10 meetings and it was 10 hours of intensity. That's not physical work, lots of sitting, but does nutrition count in terms of recovery for the cognitive? So I know that I said a lot of things there. So first, let's start with sort of some basic guidelines on what does a day look like for good nutritional recovery.
So I would say it doesn't have to be very complicated, as you said, Tim. As long as you are eating real foods, as we define as no package, no problem, or your 5-ingredient rule, you are probably on the right track better than most people, right? As long as you're not filling, in other words, as long as you're not filling your body up with processed junk that has no nutrient add and is only inflaming you, you are fine. So honestly, keep it simple, real food first. And then if you want to I do an antioxidant checklist after a hard day's work, for example. And we know our 3 categories of antioxidants are your berries. So I was like, okay, did I get a cup of berries in? Check.
Right.
Did I get 2 cups of green leafy vegetables cooked or raw? Check. Did I get a teaspoon of herb and spice? Because that's our potent heavy hitter for antioxidants. Check, right? So if you want to have kind of just a quick and easy checklist, hey, what are the 3 elements that I can bring into my day to just help myself recover and just put out the fire that I just set in my body, physically or mentally? That would be, I think, the simplest way to think about it.
Okay, and for breakfast, when people think about real foods, somebody might think bread and peanut butter is real food. what does breakfast look like? Because I think dinner makes sense. It's,
Easier.
a good quality meat, vegetables, that, like, you can envision what that dinner looks like, but what does lunch look like, and what does breakfast look like for real food?
So breakfast could look like a 3-egg omelet with mushrooms and spinach and some goat cheese or feta cheese, right? Like you get some greens in, and then you can have like a cup of berries or something on top. And then, maybe you put some herbs and spices on there. So like you got your antioxidant checklist right off the bat if you do something like that, right?
Okay.
Lunches are, I think, pretty easy, and also easy for takeout options around, because we're really fortunate in Toronto area where there's like a lot of good food bowl options. Salads, so just getting a salad bowl or just any kind of bowl with your favorite proteins, and like they put a ton of seeds and things like that. And I always like to keep like sauerkraut near me, or I tell my patients, whatever you get takeout, like any salad bowl or whatever, or you make your own salad, just put like a quarter cup, half a cup of sauerkraut on it as well. Because as we talked about in our gut health before, if you can cultivate a healthy microbiome, that's the stuff that's automatically creating anti-inflammatory molecules throughout the entire day, even when you're eating or sleeping, right? So if you have good gut health, you are lowering that inflammation and helping your body recover. Microbiome, we can get into another conversation later on, but like the impacts on sleep and our mood and mental health is also huge. So I always love to put sauerkraut, or I have kimchi with my eggs and side of avocado, things like that. So yeah, I don't know if I'm confusing it more.
No.
Pickled onions, did those count?
So pickles are different from
the fermented.
So when you're looking at a pickled jar, it will say added vinegar to it, right?
Right.
Whereas sauerkraut will not say any kind of vinegar or acid. It's like the natural bacteria that creates the acid for you. So sauerkraut will just say cabbage, water, and salt. No vinegar. And that's a real fermented
cabbage,
food.
water, salt. Okay. I'm not carrying that around. I'm just telling you that right now. I'm not that committed. I like the idea about it. It's like, but I'm going to find places. You're right.
Yeah.
Because I'm thinking about this avocado toast that I get regularly. And I think it's got fermented vegetables on it.
Yeah, sometimes they put, I think I've seen like pickled red onion on it or something. It tastes really nice. Like that's a really lovely addition. Better like one up on that is like just put sauerkraut on it. So just leave a jar of sauerkraut in our Totum fridge downstairs.
Right. Okay. I could do that. I just don't want to carry it. I could totally do that.
So that does help a lot, because it just, people can visualize everything that you just said. And I think that if you just go with some version of that through your day, then inflammation is lower and your recovery is better.
Yeah.
Right? Okay, so back to the last question I had, which is, I've had 10 meetings, 10-hour day, intense day, sitting most of the time. How does my nutrition matter at all to my cognitive recovery for the next day?
Yeah, so I think this one, I'll tie it into our last conversation on sleep as well, because like cognitive function and like helping you become more resilient to stress and just kind of like cooling all jets in your brain and your body comes from actually that sleep component. So how can we set up our nutrition to support sleep is an important question. So one of the big things is a lot of people do so well during the day. Like I ate so healthy, so well. And then at nighttime, it's when like the snacking happens and the cookies come in, or like, desserts, right? 100%. And so this is, I'm not saying never do this, but like one of the things is we need to keep our blood sugars stable while we sleep, because if our blood sugars are getting shot up high, the higher it goes up, the further it's going to drop while we sleep. And when we have our blood sugar drop so quickly at night, our body actually wakes up, because it's like we need fuel. We're out of sugar, right? Whereas if we have a more steady blood sugar level, then our body's not going to have that like big dip and not going to have those micro awakenings in our body. So one of the things, like people are like, I don't know why I'm getting up. It's not to pee. Like it could be because their blood sugar is dropping too quickly, right? And that's coming from the foods that we're eating at nighttime. So our body is much better suited to handle carbohydrates or sugars earlier in the day. We can process that way more efficiently, and it doesn't hit our blood sugar or insulin levels too much, right? So I always say, like, if you're gonna do that stuff, like eat your cake earlier in the day, right? Don't eat it right at night, because that's just gonna mess your sleep up, and train wreck after that.
That's so interesting, because right now I do the exact opposite. And the reason is I don't like, because we both love sweets. I don't like, if I do it at lunch, then I get that sugar crash.
Right.
And then by 2 or 3, I'm like so tired.
Right.
So I strategically do it at night so that the sugar crash is happening when I'm supposed to go to bed.
And you don't feel it. Like, you don't feel the hit, right?
Yeah.
and so, like, we talk about how that impacts the quality of your sleep,
my sleep,
right? But also your insulin sensitivity. You become much more like insulin resistant that way too. So this is what can contribute to a lot of fat gain or weight gain for people.
That's so interesting.
Is because they're, kind of backlogging all that stuff, where their body's like, we can't handle this right now, so we're going to store all this extra sugar as fat instead.
That's
Whereas
so
earlier in the day, it's like, yeah, we can handle this.
You're metabolizing it. Oh my God,
right?
that's so interesting.
And plus you're moving.
I need to change that. Totally.
And I get it. It's like it's a habit. It's like it's a custom that we've had throughout our societies, like dessert after dinner.
Yes.
Right.
But how can we reframe what desserts after dinner look like? So the other night I had friends over for dinner, and we had options. So I know no one's going to invite me to any parties. So I like to give people choices. And so one of the options, I know. One of the options was you could have creme brulee. There was creme brulee there. But I also cut up a bunch of oranges. And
pick
fruits,
the creme brulee.
Right? So you can pick, hey, I give my guests the option, the choice, right? So, I don't want you to feel like, hey, this is only a dessert. Like, these are the sugary foods, and that defines dessert. Whereas, oranges or other things can also be dessert. So what I do is usually I eat my bowl of oranges first, and then if I want creme brulee after, then I'll
have a little bit.
Have a little bit, but then I'm pretty really full
from
after
your
dinner and oranges.
Okay, that's a great strategy. And of course, the one thing that we haven't talked about. Well, I have 2 questions. Alcohol. So alcohol, I know, is going to destroy our sleep, and it's just bad in every single way. But it is a reality of so many people's lives. So Tim talked about the guy who had the 10 meetings and is exhausted. And I guarantee you that's tons of our patients and tons of our clients where all they want to do at the end of that day is hook up with a friend and go for drinks, because they're like, oh my God, I had the worst day. It was so stressful. And that's our society pattern. So I guess as a strategy, if I stop all those bad things 3 hours before I go to bed, am I okay or no? Is it still super bad?
It's better if you're doing it earlier in the day. So, if you have your cutoff for alcohol like 6 p.m., right? That's at least not going to impact your sleep as badly, right?
Day drinking is going to be our new thing.
Day drinking. I think there was that movie where there's morning drinking. Anyways.
She's just looking for an okay by you.
So
I'm only speaking on behalf of my patients and people I know, friends.
Not her.
Friends I know.
Yeah, so if I always say, I'm a little hardcore, and my patients know this. So if we're talking about trying to have good sleep and you still want to have, a bunch of drinks throughout your day or your week, talking about good sleep is we're not starting that conversation yet until, you're ready to. But I say, I want you to leave, alcohol is in your realm. It's in your choice, because I get it. It's a social connector. And as we talked about in our last podcast, social connection is the most important thing in terms of our health and wellness, I think. And I never want people to feel isolated because they're afraid to mess up their sleep, right? So how I like to preface it is don't be restrictive. Don't say don't drink alcohol. I'm we are movers and shakers at Totum. We like to do things that are new, to innovate and do things better, right? Yes. So how I like to try to open this up is I want you to have a variety of activities to do with your friends to decompress. So sometimes it could be going out for a drink, but sometimes it could be playing board games like you guys did the other night, right? Yep. Or sometimes it could be doing, hey, you're going to join me for one of Queen Lee's yoga classes, which we're doing on Friday night. I want you to have options so that it's not always every time I meet my friend it's to drink. It's
just drinking. Yeah.
Sometimes we drink and sometimes we don't, so that you reduce the frequency of that alcohol intake by 50%, 60, or whatever you choose. But alcohol is a difficult one because it's so ingrained in our society, but I want you to find other fun things to do with other people, right?
Yeah.
To open it up.
I love that. And to
Pickleball.
me, pickleball.
Yeah.
The pandemic really screwed us up because it was our only option for so many years. Like we've had this conversation with our friends where we said, what did we do before we sat around and drank together? Because I know we did things, we went to concerts and we maybe we went to movies and we did lots of things. And then the pandemic, it stopped it, and the only thing you could do was meet with the friends outside in their backyard. And of course, for most of us, that just means you're going to eat and drink together. So it really got us into this habit, and then everybody's kind of not wanting to push out of it. It requires some active planning. Like when we were talking about this party that we had, I'm like, we're playing games, we're doing these things, and consequently we all drank much less than we would normally because we were busy doing things, which was awesome. Okay, so one final question that I have. Recovery and hydration. And so I remember a talk that you did, I think it was last year, where you were saying mint tea is such a very good thing for you and good for your gut. And so I've been doing it at night, but I do go to bed late, and that's because lots of times we have activities and things like that with the kids' sports. And then I have the tea, and then I have to get up to go pee, which ruins my sleep. Right. So, well, I shouldn't say ruins it. I go back to sleep, but it's irritating, right? And also the reason I'm asking this question is, again, I do have tons of patients who, because our intake is always, how do you sleep? And they'll say, okay, I get 8 hours, I get 7 hours, but it's interrupted because I have to get up and go to the bathroom. Is that the 3-hour cutoff too? Is stop drinking?
No, I don't want you to be super dehydrated. But what I think the issue is for a lot of us is that we get so caught up and busy throughout our day, we forget to drink. And then at nighttime, we're trying to make up for it, right? Yeah. So how I get my patients to do this, I set an alarm on their phone. I put a 1 p.m. alarm. Okay. Is when you should have finished your first 1 liter bottle or 1 liter intake. Wow. And then 7 p.m. goes off. That means you should have finished your second liter, right? Okay, that's good. So then you can spread it throughout the day and not backlog it, because that's what really I think is causing that having to wake up to use the washroom at night. That's brilliant, because I know I hit dinner dehydrated, and then I drink a bunch at dinner, but I don't drink enough during that afternoon, because I'll drink at lunch, but lunch till dinner, that's a big spread where I think lots of people don't drink much during that time because you're busy working and doing things. So I love that. By 7, get your second liter. That's interesting. Yeah, so give that a try. We'll set an alarm on your phone right now.
Because Stacy will not be able to do that. She could set 1, but not 2.
I have faith in you, Stacy. Yeah, right? You're open to change.
Right? And somebody needs to bring reality to this thing.
The other thing I found works really well for my patients is nose breathing at night. So that's another topic we can talk about breath. When you breathe through your nose, I'm sure you guys have maybe read James Nestor's book or some of the research.
Fabulous.
When you're nose breathing, you're slowing down the function of your kidneys. Right. And so your kidneys are not outputting as much urine as quickly. So breathing through your nose is something that can help people sleep through the night and not have to wake up to pee. Perfect. So use mouth tape or Band-Aid. I like Band-Aid.
Yeah, awesome. That's great.
Next.
We've been playing around with that a little bit. Yeah.
We will
interesting.
have that as another topic. I really like that one.
I like that too.
Yeah, we've got some.
It's really important, actually.
So from my perspective, what we've learned about recovery and nutrition is really if somebody's taking one thing away from this, eat real foods throughout the day, stay away from processed foods. If you're not sure what a processed food is, then educate yourself or get somebody to help educate you, because that by itself is going to help with recovery, and you'll feel better cognitively, you'll feel better physically. So if you work out, your workouts will be better. If you need to apply yourself to a project that you're working on, you'll be able to do so with higher levels of focus and those sorts of things. Is that a fair thing to bring it back to high level?
Yeah, because that stuff puts out that inflammation in your body, that fire and chaos, right? So we want to make sure that your body's cool and calm, and also your blood sugar's not doing this, right? So that you can be steady and focused throughout your day. So
awesome.
You got it.
Thank you for coming, Tamara. Really appreciate you joining us again. And
thank you. That was awesome.
Of course, we want to thank Totum as our sponsor. And
Thank you, Totum. Thanks for having me.
I forgot to mention at the start of this one that we record in a live gym, and this particular episode, there's been a lot of heavy lifting going on. So if anybody's been hearing that,
don't let it scare you.
That's why. And now it's time to dance.